ongoing series on the glories of our beloved Shri Bhajabhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham. But first, Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastita Deshatarne. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. So in our last lecture, we discussed a very beautiful pastime of Radha and Krishna that you may remember took place in Kokilavan. Now, a short distance from Kokilavan is the very sacred lilasthan of Yavat. Yavat. I've been waiting a long time to speak about Yavat, where Maharaj Bharishabhanu built a very beautiful palace for the pleasure of his daughter Shri Radha when she married the cowherdsman named Abhimanyu. The Shastras say that this whole pastime of Radharani's marriage and her moving to Yavat began as a result of Kamsa's lust for Srimati Radharani. Yeah. One day news reached Vrindavan that Kamsa, after hearing of Radharani's legendary beauty, was planning to kidnap her and make her his own and bring her to Mathura. And when Sri Radha's grandmother, her name is Mukura, got wind of this, she came and she took Sri Radha from Varshana, where she was living with her family, and hid her in a very beautiful place in the Vrindavan forest. That place is called Shatona. Shatona. And Sri Radha lived there in a charming cottage next to a lake called Shantanu Kund. Shantanu Kund. For quite some time, actually. But later on, to further protect her, Mukura arranged for her to marry Abhimanyu. Now that marriage, it took place very quickly, one day, because Mukura was scared, Kamsa's going to come. So to give further protection, she arranged this marriage to Abhimanyu. This happened very quickly. Not everyone knew. In fact, on the day of the wedding, Krishna was on his way back to Nandagram after a day of herding cows, when an older Brajbasi who was walking by offered Krishna one big luglu. And Krishna took that luglu and he bit into it. And as he was doing so, he turned and he said to that old Brajabasi, "This is delicious. Where did it come from?" So that older Brajabasi said, "Oh, Krishna, you didn't hear? There was a big marriage this morning." So as Krishna's, biting deeper into the luglu, he asked, "Oh, and who got married?" So the old Brajabasi replied, Shrimati Radharani married. But before he could finish his sentence, hearing the name of Radharani getting married, Krishna spit out the luglu and he explained, "What? Radha?" So again, Yavat is where Sri Radha lived with her husband. Now, Yava, Y-A-V-A, is the red footlack worn by chaste Indian ladies on the bottom and sides of their feet. And Vata refers to the banyan tree. So Krishna decorated those lotus feet of Sri Radha with his own names I was reading, Krishna, 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 as the design. And the tree under which he decorated Radharani's lotus feet is called Yavavata, Yavavata, from which the town's name is derived, Yavat. So as we mentioned, the palace of Yavat was built by Maharaj Vrishabhanu as a wedding gift for his daughter. And there's a very beautiful description of the original palace. It was very beautiful and very spacious, with wide alleys, etc. But because Radharani was forced to wed someone other than Sri Krishna, she simply saw it as a prison. And every night, seated in the moon tower of the palace, we read in Vrindavan Leelas that these palaces, on top of the palace there was a moon tower where someone could sit and look at the beauty of the moon. So every night, seated in the moon tower of her palace, Radha would gaze towards Nandagram, where it's described unhappy Krishna was looking towards Yavat. So now, Radharani is Krishna's eternal consort. But for the sake of pastimes, she was apparently married to Abhimanyu. Srimati Radharani and all her friends actually, as we know, lived in and around Varshana in their youth until they were of marriageable age. And after their weddings, they all moved to Yavat with their husbands. Radharani moved with Abhimanyu to Yavat in the palace, and all her girlfriends, they also came to Yavat with their husbands. But Yogamaya deceives these husbands, and they never actually see their wives. The scripture states that, quote, the women they see are only shadows of them, unquote. And the gopis, who are actually expansions of Krishna's own pleasure potency, as is Sri Radha, they can never be touched by any other man other than him. The example is given just like Sita was always safe from the hands of Ravana, even though she had been kidnapped by him. She was the goddess of fortune. So Ravana could never really touch Sita. So Krishna, you could say, is the true husband of the gopis, and their marriage to others is just an illusion created by Yogamaya to enrich his loving pastimes. It's described that, quote, dull-witted Abhimanyu counts his wealth in cows. Thus he lives mostly in his barns, while Radharani's mother-in-law, Jatila, and her daughter, Kutila, are always preoccupied with their many household chores. So these coward men, it's just a leela, it's a pastime. They're married, but they don't actually ever see these gopis. Only Krishna sees them. But it appears they're married, so that when Krishna meets the gopis or meets Radha, the intensity of that sambhoga, that meeting, is enhanced, or it's increased. So Jatila is the mother of Abhimanyu, and thus Radharani's mother-in-law, and Kutila is the sister of Abhimanyu. And together they play the role of trying to keep Radha and Krishna from meeting. And in doing so, again, we see a constant theme. We're reminded of a constant theme in Vrindavan, that in separation, Radha and Krishna's love for each other intensifies. And again, making their meetings more relishable. And everything is made even more intense by the fact that just as Jatila and Kutila are always trying to stop Radha and Krishna from meeting, Radharani's gopi friends are always trying to unite Radha and Krishna at Yavat. So Yavat's a very special pastime place. Padakiya Bhav is very prominent there. So, for example, one night, under the cover of darkness, Krishna snuck into the courtyard of the Yavat palace, and he quickly climbed up a pilu tree. And from there, he began to imitate the singing of a cuckoo in order to attract Srimati Radharani's attention. And recognizing immediately that the sound was coming from her beloved, Radharani came and she looked out the window of her room. However, Jatila also heard Krishna singing, And she came out of the palace waving a big stick. It's described his untimely singing had made Jatila very suspicious. What does it mean when the Shastra says untimely? I looked into the matter a little bit more, because cuckoos usually sing in the morning, noon, or afternoon, or any time in between, but they rarely, if ever, sing at night. You won't hear cuckoos singing at night. So Jatila took this untimely singing. So she's always, afraid Krishna's going to come in or Radha's going to go out and they're going to meet. So she came out that night. Well, it's dark. It came out with it, swinging her stick. Now, Jatila is also described as half blind. So being very determined, she came out, but because she's blind, she couldn't climb the tree, so she stood at the base of the tree and she said, "Who's there? Who's there?" So at that point, Krishna went silent. But that did not convince Jatila that whoever was cuckooing, can I say it like that? Whoever was cuckooing had left. So waving her stick in the air, she circled that tree, going around and around, while calling out to Srimati Radharani. She called out, "Radharani, turn the lights out and go to sleep. I am keeping a very deep-voiced cuckoo from spoiling your and our family's reputation. Tomorrow, I will hand him over to the king's men," unquote. So Radha did as she was told. She blew out the candles. But she stayed by her window. It's described exchanging gestures and whispers with Krishna, while Jatila continued to tap her stick and pace around the courtyard. Krishna was quite uncomfortable in his perch, but he remained where he was. It's described encouraged by Sri Radha's nearby presence. And finally, Jatila sat down to rest, and then she dozed off. And making most of the occasion, Krishna then spoke openly to Radha until the light of the dawn approached, at which point he climbed down from the tree and ran out the gate. Now in the morning, enter Abhimanyu into the drama. Like someone comes on to the stage, the next part of the plot thickens. So in the morning, Abhimanyu, who had been spending the night guarding cows, entered the palace and saw his mother fast asleep in the courtyard. So waking her up, he asked, "Mother, what are you doing here?" So still drowsy, Jatila looked up into the tree and she said, Someone's in the tree making cuckoo sounds." So Abhimanyu looked up and didn't see anything. So he said, "Mother, there's no one up there. What to speak of a cuckoo bird?" So Jatila said, "I am certain that a very mischievous person climbed up the tree to gain access to your new bride. He must have left as I rested." So Abhimanyu, he was doubtful, but he said, "Mother, if you fear such a danger, then from now on I will lock the main gate every night." So the acharyas say the next day, all Krishna could think of was Srimati Radharani. So that next night, he made his way back to the palace again. And while circling that mansion, that palace, towards the back of the palace, he came to a cluster of berry trees, B-E-R-I, berry trees, which in English means the Indian plum tree. And they made a little kind of a forested area right at the back of the palace there called Daha Ravana forest. It's on the opposite side of the palace from where Krishna was the night before. So Krishna was standing next to one of those berry trees, Indian plum trees, closest to the wall, next to another window of Radharani's room. So again, he called out to Radha with his cuckoo-like voice. And again, Jatila, suspecting foul play, she came out of the palace with a stick, and she went around to the back of the palace. But she couldn't see Krishna. Although this time he's not in the tree, he's at the base of the tree, but she couldn't see him because I was reading that Yoga Maya, she makes Krishna invisible whenever he's in Yavat. So none of the residents of Yavat, except for Vrindavaneshwari and perhaps some of her gopis, can see him, but everyone else not allowed to see him when he's there to facilitate the pastime. So she couldn't see Krishna standing there. And the pastimes described in detail, actually. There's more detail given than I've shared in Rupa Goswami Ujjvala Nilamani 116. Because I was curious. I'd heard, many of us have heard the pastime. When we go to Yavat, the speaker always talks about the pastime of Krishna climbing the tree, making the sound of the cuckoo. But I didn't know that the next night Krishna came back again, and on the other side of the palace, under a berry tree, he again sounded like cuckoo, bird. But when I was reading Ujjvala Nilamani, before giving this class, I discovered. And then I found elsewhere it's described in other places as well. So we can summarize in more detail. Rupa Goswami 116, Ujjvala Nilamani. He gives us an insight into this pastime. Quote, last night, Shri Krishna was standing near a berry tree near Srimati Radharani's courtyard, cooing like a kukila again and again. Srimati Radharani understood his signal, but as soon as she went to open the door, her bangles and bells sounded. Shri Krishna heard them, but from inside the house, old Jatila called out, "Oh, who is there? Who is there?" Hearing her loud call, Shri Krishna, with a distressed heart, spent the whole night under the berry tree. Shri Rupa Goswami ki. So 2 times, a similar lila with a little variation. So wonderful. One acharya concludes, quote, may the fortunate and pure-hearted souls who know what secrets Shri Krishna and Srimati Radharani share from their respective hiding places on these moonless nights be merciful to us. These moonless nights be merciful to us. So there are a number of famous pastimes at Yavat, which we'll share with you perhaps in the next 1 or 2 lectures. But we can finish today with a humorous one, again with Jatila, and this time along with her daughter Kutila. Now, Jatila's name is very interesting. It refers to a jat, Jatila. A jat is refers to the distinctive bunch of hair on her head. She has a big jat, we say, on her head. And generally it's the sadhus who wear this style of hair. Sadhus, typically they never cut their hair. I was told they keep their tejas, their spiritual strength, in their hair. So they don't cut. It grows very, very long. I personally seen sadhus with hair that goes down to the ground or even longer. In fact, I took a photo one time of a sadhu I met in Nepal, up in the mountains near Muktinath, near the Kaligandaki River. The photo shows his hair extending, well beyond his body, like 6 or 7 feet beyond his body or more. He told me that his parents never cut his hair, and he left home as a youth to become sadhu, so he'd never cut his hair his whole life. So sometimes in these cases, I was told that the sadhus, they tie their hair up in this, it's not even a top knot, it's just a big bunch of hair. And in order to keep it there, some of the sadhus, they mix they mix in tree resin and other substances to keep their jat from falling to the side. They put the tree resin there so it becomes, very solid, doesn't move. And it stays like that for their whole life. So Jatila had a tangled head of hair like that above her head. But the important thing here is that the acharyas say that her mind was also jat, very, very twisted and very entangled. So Jatila. She's always thinking, how to keep Radha in Yavat and how to keep Krishna out of Yavat. So this is her mentality. This is all Purnamasi, Yogamaya's arrangement to facilitate these leelas. And her daughter, Abhimanyu's sister, his name is Kutila. And in Sanskrit, Kutila means crooked. So the both of them, Jatila and Kutila, are always presenting obstacles to Radha and Krishna's meetings. So one day, Srimati Radharani had a scheduled meeting with Krishna in a beautiful grove not far from the palace. So she made an excuse that she was going to pick flowers, and Jatila initially agreed. But as the day progressed, Jatila, with her entangled mind, began to worry that, she's gone a long time. Maybe she's meeting with Krishna. So she sent Kutila to look around the area outside, in the fields, the pastures, the forest, to see if Radha and Krishna were meeting. So in time, Kutila actually approached the place where Radha and Krishna were meeting. But Shri Radha had posted several of her gopis as lookouts. And when they spotted, Kurakid Kotila coming, they ran to tell Radha and Krishna. So Radha and Krishna cleverly hid themselves in a very close and nearby forest. So you would think, Radharani's hidden, Krishna's hidden, but there's always a problem in Krishna's hiding somewhere. He can be easily discovered. He's God. How can he be easily discovered? The reason he can be easily discovered is that his transcendental body is extremely fragrant. Extremely fragrant. The aroma of Krishna's body smells like aguru, which is a very rare and expensive oil or perfume that we use in our deity worship. Aguru mixed with musk, sandalwood, and camphor. And when I read that, some months ago, I read that. I have some aguru actually, and I also have musk perfume, but this musk perfume that I have is from the 1920s, because musk perfume, the original perfume, is banned in India because unscrupulous people take it from the musk deer in an improper way. The sadhus used to take that musk. It comes in little granules in the navel of the musk deer. So they'd take a silver spoon, the sadhus, and they would take out these little granules from the navel of the musk deer. The musk deer uses that aroma to attract the female deer. So in mating season, it becomes very predominant. So sadhus would take a little silver spoon, take some of the granules and mix it in and make a perfume for their deity worship. But modern day persons would, anyway, I won't go into detail, but it's forbidden now to take that musk granules from the male deer. But I have some from 1920, some of that oil. So I mixed it with aguru, the musk, the sandalwood, camphor, offered it to my deities, and then after the puja, I got to smell the actual aroma that Krishna's transcendental body has, and something wonderful. Prabhupada would say simply wonderful. So that when Krishna hides, the gopis, who's ever looking for him, they can easily find him because that aroma is very strong. In fact, in Shastra it says that if Krishna's someplace and then he leaves, that distinctive aroma stays in that place for at least a danda or 20 minutes. So now when Kutila came on the scene, she smelled that fragrance and she immediately said, "Ah, I know that Shaim has been here." So Shaim, or Shama, of course, is one of the popular names for Krishna, especially in ISKCON. And Shaim means, it refers to the hue of his transcendental body, which is like the color of a monsoon cloud. Sham means the color of the monsoon cloud. And we often call out in ISKCON, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham. And that's good because Radharani's form is golden. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange, Radhe Brindavaneshwari. But more specifically, what color gold? Well, the color of gold that when it's been melted down 10,000 times. Because when gold is melted down by jewelers, it becomes more golden, more lustrous, more beautiful. So the color of Radharani's transcendental body is the color of gold that's been melted down 10,000 times. And because Krishna's body is the color of a monsoon, a dark, grayish, bluish black, you could say, monsoon cloud, when Radha and Krishna are together, it's described that they look like lightning in a monsoon cloud in the monsoon season. Like here, right now, here in India, we're in monsoon season. I'm in Maharashtra, so it's very prominent here, the monsoon season. And sometimes I look in the sky and I see this dark, bluish black monsoon cloud coming there. You see this bolt of lightning, very bright lightning. And I think, yes, that's how it's described in the scripture. Vrindavaneshwari, Shrimati Radharani's golden form with Krishna's bluish black monsoon cloud. So I've seen, I can understand the analogy very clear. Being in India you can see these things. So anyway, as Kutila approached the area where Radha and Krishna were, that I know Sham is here. So in order that she didn't look for Krishna, Radharani devised a plan. Well, you could say Radha and Krishna devised a plan. Radharani came out of the forest with a basket of flowers, as if she had been picking the flowers. But due to the strong aroma of Krishna's form, Kutila said, "Shri Radha, I know Shaim's been here." But in Sanskrit, of course, words can have different meanings. We've discussed that many times. So Shama can also mean nighttime. So Radharani said to Kutila, "Oh, Kutila, no, the night is no longer here. You can see the morning is coming, the sun is rising." So Kutila got frustrated and she said, "No, I mean Hari. Hari is nearby, I can smell him." But the word Hari can also mean lion in Sanskrit. So Radha said, "Oh, Kutila, you smell the lion? Oh, you have saved our lives. Thank you. We must all leave immediately." So seeing that she wasn't making any progress, Kutila stomped off. So then Krishna, the plot thickens. Then Krishna, he did the most amazing thing. He disguised himself to look like Abhimanyu. And catching up with Kutila, he said, "Oh, my dear sister, what are you doing here?" So Kutila, she was surprised to see her brother, who was actually Krishna disguised as Abhimanyu. So she said, "Oh, Abhimanyu, you know, I almost caught Radha and Krishna together. I almost caught your wife with Krishna." So Krishna, disguised as Abhimanyu, he said, "Good work, Kutila. You know, I have to tell you something very confidential. It's a secret." He said, "I have heard that Krishna has disguised himself as me." And when Kutila heard that, she shook her her head and she said, "That rascal Krishna, he's disguised himself to look like you?" And Krishna, disguised as Abhimanyu, he said, "Yes. And I'm going to call King Kamsa and get some soldiers and have that rascal arrested. And as soon as I do that, I'll fetch Radharani, take her into her quarters, lock the doors, and stay with her and protect her." So Kutila said, "Yes, you must do that." So then Krishna disguised as Abhimanyu, he went on, he said, "And you should be aware, Kutila, that I have heard that this Krishna, disguised as me, is going to come to the palace at the normal time I usually come, and he's going to try to enter the palace. I want you to go back now, and you tell our mother what he's planning to do. He's planning to come to the palace. Then the two of you, you go to the Goshala, and you get some very wet cow dung and make big cow patties and pile them on the roof." So Kutila said, "Well, why would we do that?" So then Krishna, disguised as Abhimanyu, he said, "Well, when that rascal Krishna comes disguised as me, you ask him who he is, and he will tell you a big lie at the gate. He will say, 'Of course I'm Abhimanyu.' And at that time, you take those big, wet cow dung patties and you throw them down on him." So Kutila started laughing and laughing. She said, "I love this plan. Oh, Krishna's going to come disguised as you to the palace." So she ran home, and together with Jatila, they went to the barn and they got very fresh cow dung and made into patties. I think it's described 20 or 30. And they piled them on the roof just in front of the main gate to the palace. And they waited for Krishna, disguised as Abhimanyu, who's actually Abhimanyu. So at the normal time, the real Abhimanyu came home. But he saw the door to the palace was locked. This is unusual. And, he looked up and he saw that his mother and his sister were up on the roof, screaming at him, "You rascal, you Debachi, we know who you are. You're Krishna." So Abhimanyu, he's like, "What?" He looked up, he said, "Mother, have you gone mad? Kutila, you're my sister. I'm Abhimanyu. I'm not Krishna." So Jatila and Kutila shot back, "No, you are Krishna disguised as Abhimanyu." So Abhimanyu yelled, "Come on down, you can pinch me, you can see I'm your son." So then Jatila and Kutila said, "We knew you would say that." So at that very moment, they started throwing down these very wet cow dung patties all over him. They were splattering, it's described, all over him. And they threw more and more. And finally they knocked him down, and finally, all you could see was his nose, I think his few fingers, covered in a cow patty. Popped his head out and he said, my mother and my sister must have been possessed by a ghost. I have to go to Mathura to get an exorcist who can take ghosts out of people's bodies. So I remember in the beginning of the movement, I'm not sure now, but in the beginning of the movement, there was a picture of a painting in the Old Nectar of Devotion, accompanied by a comment by Srila Prabhupada, where you see Jatila hitting the real Abhimanyu with a stick, screaming at him, "You rascal, you're Krishna." And Abhimanyu saying, "No, I'm your son." And Kutila's nearby adding, "Hit him more, mother, hit him more." So Prabhupada's commenting on that picture, that painting. Remember that. So it's a well-known pastime in Braj. Now these are very simple pastimes. And one may think, oh, the pastimes of the Lord, He's God, they must be very complicated. But actually, the beauty of love is often in its simplicity. That things that happen may not appear to be so significant, they may be very simple, but it's the mood in which they happen that makes them important to the lovers. They can be sitting on a bench and just, the boy hands the girl a flower and melts her heart. So loving affairs can be very simple, but it's the mood behind them that really makes them what they are. And that's especially true in the spiritual world. If it's true in this world, how much more important it is ad infinitum in the spiritual sky. So a simple pastime. I've told this pastime of the cow dung patties many times, but it's always ever fresh, just like the cow patties. They were very fresh. So the pastimes are always fresh in Krishna Lila. And we can say them, sing them, glorify them again and again and again. So I hope you enjoyed these wonderful pastimes today. I mentioned, I think at the last lecture, that Krishna brought Goloka to this earth and manifested it as Gokula. And he performed many leelas, many pastimes in Gokula, both for the pleasure of his devotees in the spiritual world, but for the benefit of the conditioned souls as well in this world. And when he had enacted sufficient pastimes, he left this world for Goloka, confident that if we spent a good amount of time, now we're saying a good amount of time, hearing and chanting these pastimes, we will become purified to the point that we can join the same pastimes in Goloka. You only get from something as much as you put into it. Like, if you're an athlete, you can't just show up at the track and start running. As much time as you put in training and into your lifestyle, actually, as an athlete, as much as you put that into that, effort into that, that will be the result of the race. So it's also true in the spiritual equation. We have to find time. Shravanam Kirtanam brings Krishna Smaranam. Kali Yuga, we're all very busy as bees, and that is necessary, but we have to find time. As much time as possible, because it's so purifying. So Krishna, in a beautiful verse I found in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, first chapter, verse 6 and 7, we hear how Krishna felt that he had given us enough time, enough material, enough subject matter. His pastimes are infinite. You can't count how many pastimes there are. But when he came to this earth, this particular verse in 11th canto, I found it so interesting. Krishna left this planet when he felt that he had given us sufficient lila to hear and chant about to become pure devotees. So I thought that would be a really appropriate verse to listen to today, to hear. So I will finish. Really good verse from 11th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the reservoir of all beauty. All beautiful things emanate from him, and his personal form is so attractive that it steals the eyes away from all other objects, which then seem devoid of beauty in comparison to him. When Lord Krishna was on the earth, he attracted the eyes of all people. When Krishna spoke, his words attracted the minds of all who remembered them. By seeing the footsteps of Lord Krishna, people became attracted to him, and thus they wanted to offer their bodily activities to the Lord as his followers. In this way, Krishna very easily spread his glories, which are sung throughout the world by the most sublime and essential Vedic verses. Lord Krishna considered that simply by hearing and chanting those glories, conditioned souls born in the future would cross beyond the darkness of ignorance. Being satisfied with this arrangement, he left for his desired destination." Wow. Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada also said that just as Krishna and the sages, they cross over the ocean of material nescience, material existence, as the sages cross over the ocean of material existence with the boat of transcendental knowledge, and they get to the other side. The mystical thing is that that boat of transcendental knowledge with which they cross the ocean of nescience to the other side is still on this side. It remains on this side of the ocean. And we can also get in that boat of transcendental knowledge and cross the ocean of nescience to join Krishna and his eternal associates in the spiritual world. And therefore these lectures. So many lectures these days. So many of my god brothers and god sisters are lecturing. I think the lecturing has increased 1,000-fold, at least online, during these present historic times of the pandemic. So that's the silver lining, as we've discussed many times, in this cloud of darkness in Kali Yuga. So thank you, everyone, so much. And I will be back in a couple of days with more leelas about Yavat. Stay tuned. There's some really wonderful leelas about Yavat. I will take your leave. Shishi Gaur Nitai ki, Shishi Krishna Balaram ki, Shishi Radha Shamasundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Golok Vrindavan Dham ki, Goku Vrindavan Dham ki, back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe, Sham Shri Radhe Sham, Hare Krishna.